It's the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions, weekly held. Starring Tim Curley, Colton Pierce. Now, let's join the show.
Yeah,
Which stupid people would buy.
Yeah. All right. So, how's it going?
It's going. Welcome back to the Go to Hell podcast.
Yeah, we're back after our beer sabbatical.
I know, it's been a while. Good. I am really anticipating this weekend. So I was like, which is great. Actually, I appreciate that I'm excited for something other than the end of school, because it just keeps my mind occupied on other things other than just being like, man, get these damn kids out of my class.
Yeah, no, we associate getting excited with things with children. I think just to take this kind of deep for a minute, it's good for adults to get really excited about trying out and doing new things. So we kind of talked about going into the class, so we wanted to brew beer, but I think right away you and I dove in to the deep end immediately. And
we're not looking back.
No, we're not looking back. It was 6 weeks. Last episode we recorded was on our way to our first class. I would say the class was...
It was 3 weeks, 6 classes.
I don't know how many... Yeah, 3 weeks, 6 courses. I don't know how... It was fairly informative. Shout out to the teacher...
Chris.
Instructor, there we go. Instructor Chris. He did a great job, and I think he's got really good ideas to make the class more practical and even better.
Yeah.
It helps that the class... collaborates with somebody else local in the Fresno area who's a professional brewer.
Yep.
Started out as a home brewer, but now a professional brewer, and he's got videos on YouTube. In fact, we'll link them in the show in case you're listening to this and you want to see how difficult it is. They help out a lot. I can't imagine what people were doing 10, 15 years ago, kind of bumbling the way they're around, reading through a book.
Yeah.
Or a DVD or something that they'd bought somewhere, like, here are the methods of home brewing. This guy walks you through the process, but we've actually been lucky enough to be walked through the process through YouTube of the beer system that we bought. So we've gone, like I said, we've gone all in. We bought a brewer. It's an all-in-one brewing system kit, and we've been buying all kinds of other accessories to go with it. We're still looking at other ones.
Yeah,
we're basically the guy who we're two kids who've decided we want to play guitar, and we've already bought like the $2,000 Gibson guitar.
How much money do you think that we've spent so far?
Let's see, I dropped $600 on the machine. I've dropped probably $750, maybe seven for now. I still have to get the RV.
Are you including the kegs that you bought this weekend too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then I just dropped 200, and I mean, like, so that's $9. So we're like $1,000, and we still got a little bit more to buy, but we're sorry, there's a fight going on in the hockey game, so we're just about ready to brew. Now you could do this for cheaper, like you could probably find somebody that can jimmy rig up.
You could do it for cheaper, but it's going to be a lot more complicated. And I think you and I just want to.
A lot more complicated, a lot more chances for fuck ups along the way, because that's also part of what buying the system also helps with, is that it limits our fuck ups. It's one thing going into one thing, and then from there, once the beer is made, it either goes into bottles or a keg.
We're not idiots around chemistry or alchemy, but that's not why we're getting into it. We're getting into it because we want to jump into this and like not just churn out a beer every once in a while, but actually get into this and churn out a lot of beer, and one, to drink, two, to drink things that we have a hard time getting, or maybe hard. Like we can get IPAs around. One of the things we've talked about is you can get IPAs around here, but it's hard. Everyone in the IPA market, for whatever reason, is leaned into 7 to 9% IPAs. So there's not a lot of drinkable ones unless you get an session IPA. So if we'd like just a 6.2% beer, we'd like to be able to make that.
Yeah. And so we're starting off
an
with
English mild. We can make an
English
English mild. So
So we're starting off with, we're going to make blind pig. Fuck. We're going to, sorry, this is a huge hit. We're going to start off by making blind pig clone this weekend. We'll know in 6 weeks maximum how we did on it. I'm assuming there's going to be an issue or two that we don't get perfect, but we're hoping we're going to have something delicious at the end of it. So, but really excited for it. I keep talking about it with as many people as I'm allowed to talk with it about. This is the most I'm actually allowed to talk about it. My wife doesn't care. I love her, but she's just like, yeah, whatever. But and I can't talk about it at work because I'm not really supposed to be talking about that with teenagers. So, but it's good. So excited for that this weekend. How about you? How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm excited with that.
Yeah.
Excited with that. Business continues to move forward and kind of settle down. We've just decided we're going to move down the process of seriously upgrading our website. So that's going to take about 6 months. So that'll be fun. I wouldn't call myself a builder,
But if you build it, they will come.
well, my skill is, I think, perfecting things.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm a photo editor. And I mean, I could go out and take pictures, and I'm still I've been in this long enough. I'm hoping at some point to get some pro gear and shoot some events around here, like Fresno State events. And we now have 2 major races come through Tulare twice a year. And then when I go other big events around the country, have my own camera gear. But I'm really good at making photos that other people have taken better. I think I just have more of a knack for that. But I'm also always interested in it fits into my profile of constantly honing and refining, and how do we make this better, and how we make this better, and how we make this better. So even though we're not really going to be building from the ground up a new website, we'll have a team of 3 or 4 programmers who will work with us to kind of tear down to the studs what we have and put a new facade and some other things in there. So maybe replace the electrical and the plumbing while we're at it, so to speak. So that's good. Weather's good. So things going pretty well.
Nice. That's good.
Daughter-in-law still dealing with cancer. That blows.
Yeah. That's not great.
She's still working, and I haven't gotten a clear answer as why if she's working because she's bored, or they need the money, or they think they need the money. But so she's gotten sick a couple times the last 2 weeks. So that girl needs to take it easy. But other than that, we're doing well. So what's the first beer we're drinking, and where did you get it?
You're drinking the We Love LA. We love it. From Coronado Brewing Company. If you're unfamiliar in the state of California with the wildfires that happened in Los Angeles, it's actually 200 plus breweries signed up to do this series called We Love LA, and the proceeds from buying these beers go to helping relief the fires that happened in that area. And this is the first one I've had in a while. I had it at the brewery itself when I was there for a field trip. Don't at me on that. Kids were exploring Coronado Island for the day, and I had time to kill. So
You sent them to the ice cream place at the
they all were
Hotel
doing.
del
They literally
Coronado.
were. Nobody was coming near me. Nobody knew where I was. I didn't want to know where they were. It's like one of those where it's like, all right, you have 4 hours to go explore Coronado.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. So they're off doing that. And I walked my happy ass all the way down to the brewery, which is on the complete other side of the island from where the hotel is. So we dropped them off at the hotel. I mean, like we went there, we did like a quick walk around, and then kids went down to the beach, or they went and looked at shops. And I walked all the way around to the brewery, which is, if you're on Coronado Island, it's Orange is the main road. You got to go on Orange, and you literally have to take it all the way to the ocean on the other side of the island, which is, I don't know. It didn't seem like far when we were there the other day, or when we were there 2 summers ago, but we were also drinking lots of beer. It was pretty far when
Was
I was
it?
walking. Yeah, I was like,
I was like,
like,
that's
man,
not
this
that
is-
wasn't a far walk. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
no,
It was
but
like
I was
it was
walking
like
there and I
a-
was like, dude, I feel like
it
it's
was like a brisk 15-minute walk.
yeah. I kept going and going. And I was on the phone with Audrey for half an hour.
Oh wow.
And I do not walk slow. And I was hustling. I was like, damn, like what the heck? And I finally get there and I was like, oh,
Well,
man.
let's be fair. Our judgment of distance has been off the last month, so
So
we've had several instances of this.
yeah. So it was like the same exact thing. Like I was like, geez, how far away is this? It's just anticipation of beer. That's all it is. It makes it that seem that much further. But yeah, so I get there, I try it on tap. It's fantastic. It's delicious. It's a little flat tonight, which is kind of a bummer. I had to get it in a crowler. They don't can there.
To be fair, it says
To be fair.
consume within 48 hours or less. So yeah, that's my bad.
Well, it's not your bad. I mean,
Well, I mean, I left it at home. We were supposed to
that was
drink it Friday, but
I mean, still wasn't 48 hours.
yeah, it was close. So
Yeah.
uh,
And I mean, crowlers keep better than growlers, but it's still like,
if you are a beer drinker and if you like brewery locations, Coronado is right at the top of the list.
oh yeah,
It's got a fantastic location. You're within a couple blocks of the ocean, so you get a nice breeze. They have lots of beer on tap, every kind of beer you can think of, but it's also family friendly, and the menu and the food there is fantastic. So
yeah. And sit outside at San Diego. I was like, they don't have a lot of outside seating. That's the one downside to it, but it's a fantastic brewery. So good. I was telling Tim before we started that this is the best beer that they've made in a long time. This one and another one that we have from there. So, in my opinion, they still make really good beer. I'm just saying that they were up there as like one of my top breweries for a long time. And I feel like they've kind of dwindled out of that. But if they made this consistently and they put this out every single time, then I'd be like, oh yeah, Coronado. That's one of the top ones out there. So it's really good. I'm sad for those of you that listen to this.
Well, fortunately, there's been a lot of breweries in our area in the last 10, 12 years. Unfortunately, they've crowded out a lot of beer that we used to get around here from up north and down south. I would say more down south than up north. They've crowded them out on the shelves, and so I don't think we get as much San Diego beer, in particular Coronado beer, as we used to. So we used to get AleSmith on a regular basis at like Bevmo or one or two places. I haven't seen an AleSmith in a long time, other than maybe like a Bomber, one of their really good porters or stouts, but not the Tony Gwynn Pale Ale that our friend Chris was mentioning is one of his favorite beers. Spot on that, but yeah, we used to get that for 2 or 3 summers, and I haven't seen it for a while. So
yep. So we're just gonna make our own.
Yeah, we'll just make our own. I think that's the beer I had at AleSmith on our beer marathon, because I was again trying to keep it under control, and I think that Tony Gwynn 365, whatever his lifetime batting average is.
Which, speaking of which,
I think comes in around, it's in the 5 range, so it's pretty good alcohol level.
Yeah,
if you're doing a lot of drinking and driving.
Yeah, yeah. So really good. Highly recommend.
All right, tonight's going to be just kind of topics.
Oh wait, we still have our TikTok trend with.
Oh, I know. I figured you were going to do that, but tonight will be a variety of hot topics. We'll do TikTok trends first. And he's made it clear he doesn't want us doing the guessing game anymore.
I'm sorry, Andy. Where we guess the same word.
Yeah. He found that painful. I agree with him.
Yeah, I get it. I'm sorry, Andy.
Just not good at it. All right, I'm not good at it. I don't know.
Oh, well, you're going to have
The problem with that game is that's one of those games where I'm not the right person to do that game, because I'm more looking for a funny answer than the right answer, so to speak. And so I don't think I'm playing the game right.
I think you played the game just fine. Well, actually, I mean, if that's the case, then I have to go back to the drawing board for our TikTok trends with Tim, because I do have a slight guessing game.
Oh, that's fine.
All
So
right.
it's just not it's not the two of us guessing, right?
No, it's not the two of us guessing.
Oh, I can do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, kind of. All right. So this one is one that gets played quite often on podcasts and stuff. So, so this game is it's kind of like hot and cold is again. So it's you are going to have to guess the word that I am thinking. And based off of your words that you're guessing, I'm going to rate them on a scale of 0 to 100, and your goal is to get to 100. So you have to guess my word. 100 is my word. Yeah, see, I told you. So, and I'm choosing a generic word. I'm not going to choose something like, I don't know, buttermilk pancakes or something, like complicated.
Okay.
But it's still like you're going to have to guess it. And then so like if you're far away, then it's like, okay, you get a 2. But if you're like in like you're starting to find in like the category, I'll be like, oh, you're 55 or whatever. So you're trying to get to 100. You're trying to get there. So
I apologize in advance to everyone listening.
I know that I had already said that maybe I'll have to go back to the drawing board on this one, but whatever. So I have my word, so you're going to guess one word, and then I'll tell you how well you are doing on it. So let me know when.
Baseball.
Oh, 10.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry.
Food.
Okay. 70.
Tacos.
70.
Breakfast.
70.
Lunch.
70.
Is dinner going to help?
75?
Sandwich.
70.
Meat.
50.
Dessert.
80?
Ice cream.
50.
What? So it's not a type of dessert.
No.
Cocktail.
70.
Good Lord. It's not a drink.
Mm-mm.
Is it a type of food?
Yes.
And dinner doesn't get me there. So it's closer to dessert than dinner.
It was closer to dinner than lunch and breakfast, and it's close, but it was closer in dessert than dinner. You'll understand what I mean by that when you get it.
Fruit salad. Jello.
75? Jello? 60.
Fruit cocktail.
72. It was 75 for the fruit salad, 72 for the fruit cocktail. I think you were going in a good direction by like guessing meat earlier. Like maybe
Guessing meat, not
Yeah.
meaning specifically meat, but
like
potatoes.
I would go like categories. Okay, potatoes. 80.
It's a side dish.
It's not really a dish as much as an ingredient.
Whipped cream.
No.
Milk. Butter.
10. All right, it's not that low, but it's like the 60. I'm sorry, Andy.
Good grief.
This is what people play.
Yeah. This is why I'm not on TikTok.
I know.
I'm running out of patience.
Go to the categories. You said meat. Go to something else.
Salad. Vegetable.
Vegetable. Okay, vegetable. 80. And remember dessert and dinner? Vegetable.
Avocado.
Fuck. Avocado. Okay, I'll give you like 89.
I'm trying to think of...
Dessert. Dinner.
My mind is drawing a gross point blank.
Vegetable. I'm pretty sure this is a vegetable.
Tomato?
Dessert?
Well, you're...
Yeah.
fruit and vegetable.
It's still
and
like
dessert
it's still like 90. Yeah, 90.
Wait, dessert? Vegetable? Is it fruit or vegetable?
Vegetable.
Zucchini bread.
Oh, okay. So zucchini bread, like 95.
Banana bread.
No, I know that that's a fruit. So
Zucchini bread. Oh, jeez.
80. More emphasis on the zucchini. You're like right there.
But it's a dessert?
Dessert and can be used in dinner. Yeah. I mean, it's not a dessert. We're looking at just the word is the vegetable, but a lot of people know it for dessert.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah. And you're thinking to yourself, who puts a vegetable in dessert?
No,
This-
on my mind's blank on what.
I was like, this is a very popular dessert during certain times of the year.
Oh, no, that's fruit though. Oh, good grief. I mean, seriously, my brain's just like,
Typically a November dessert.
oh, shoot, pumpkin pie.
It's pumpkin is
Or
the
pumpkin. No, seriously, I was just like, what am I missing? And nothing was coming.
That's
to
a
mind.
vegetable, right? Pumpkin's a vegetable.
I have no idea.
It's a gourd, right? I don't. And then like people have it like as like puree or whatever on the side of whatever it is that they're like. I've had like a pumpkin. I don't know. It's not used as much as squash, but there you go. So, and then tomato and what was your other one? Potatoes. Those are both ground growing fruits / vegetables. So I was like, I mean, tomatoes grow on the vine, but so do pumpkins. Or are pumpkins like a watermelon?
Pumpkins are fruit.
What? Dude, okay. Well,
The answer may surprise you. A pumpkin is, in fact, a fruit. Dr. Joe Masapny, Texas A&M. What the hell do Aggies know? Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service vegetable specialist in Dallas. Yeah, whatever. Made up.
well, my apologies.
Said scientifically
to Andy.
speaking, pumpkins are fruit simply because anything that starts from a flower is botanically a fruit.
Got it.
Whatevs.
My apologies to everybody that listened to that. I'll come
It's
back.
not going out of the show though.
I'll come back with a.
You know what? That's the time when you're listening to that. That's the time, if you're not driving, to pull out a beer and drink your beer while we're struggling with TikTok.
Yeah, I'll come back with a better one next time. I promise. But for the time being, that's what you get. So, all right. Your topics for tonight.
Which one do you want to start with? Or do you have a preference?
Nah, I don't care. I mean, we could talk about the hot topic, which is the Pope.
Well, we can talk about the Pope. That kind of leads us to the other ones in a direct or roundabout way anyway.
Sure.
So we got a new Pope, first American Pope. It's also the first Pope from one of the 5, I think, most populous Catholic countries in the world. 5 most populous Catholic countries are not in any particular order. In fact, it's probably backwards, but United States, Brazil.
Is this per capita or is this just based on?
No, pure populations. United States, Brazil, Congo, Philippines, and then I don't remember what the other one is. But this is the first time we've had a pope from any one of those countries. Obviously, first American pope. Seems like a pretty cool dude. There's video of him at the last time the White Sox were in the World Series in mid-90s or mid-2000s. He was actually on the broadcast. Just happened to be in the broadcast. And somebody made a good joke about it's good that he's a White Sox fan because it shows that he knows what it means to suffer.
They are the second worst team in baseball.
Yeah.
After setting the worst record.
Look, they have spent most of my entire life as a terrible team. They had a good 10, 15 year run where they were good, but they never flirted really with the World Series when they had Frank Thomas and Robert Ventura. They just never had enough to get over the hump past the Cleveland Indians at that time were really good, and the Yankees, and I don't remember who else would have been good during. Oh, the Mariners were really good during that period, but they never had enough. So initial reports was he was just going to be another Francis. If you're not Catholic, you don't really know much about Francis or the current Pope. Francis was known as a fairly progressive guy, both politically and theologically. He well, theologically he's kind of weird, but I would say he was overall he was progressive. I think he did away with, I don't know if he banned Latin Mass. I think he did. I think he did away with Latin Mass. If that's not the case, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure he did away with Latin Mass. And then on social issues, he was very progressive. Political issues, he was very progressive. He seemed to be very overtly anti-American. I just mean that in a strictly clinical sense. And I don't mean that in a, like, he's a bad guy, but he did not like the United States. And I don't think it was just because of the values of the United States. I just don't think he liked the United States as being kind of this hegemonic power running the world and sticking its nose in it's everywhere. So
He
he
doesn't
seemed like he very open.
he doesn't like the United States playing the Catholic Church. I get it.
So he seemed to be very open to criticize the United States. Again, I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just, I think, a fair observation. So I can't remember his actual name, but Pope Leo, that's what he's called himself. When he initially, within the first couple hours, day or so of him getting appointed, he was described as a Francis acolyte, but that has proven out to be not true. I think he's much more pragmatic and a bit of a mixed bag. I think he's probably a compromise pick. He still very much leans into criticizing, I would say, most of what U.S. foreign policy is. He's very much, I wouldn't say open borders, but he doesn't like the Trump administration stance on immigration, and he's very much pro-environment, global warming, that kind of thing. Not pro-global warming, but thinks global warming's an issue. It's a church issue. It's a religious issue.
It's a world issue.
World issue. So in that way, he's probably aligned with Francis. However, I think I saw that he came out within the first day or two of being sworn in, so to speak, whatever they officially call it. I think he came out and said he's not for gay marriage. So if I'm correct about that, that's a break from Francis. And then he seems to be, I think, taking the correct tone from what I've read, assuming this is true. He's taking the correct tone in terms of theology and stuff. He's not doing away with Vatican II. I'm not going to get into Vatican II. I don't even know. I couldn't even speak on Vatican II properly. Vatican II, basically the Vatican II is the updated beliefs of the Catholic Church, and it was done. What, Colton? Do you know?
No, I
think it was I think it was 20th century. It was redone. And it's controversial for reasons, again, I couldn't spell out. But he's not going to undo or redo Catholic Vatican II. But I think I've read that he's basically going to be hands-off with how local parishes decide to worship. It's not going to be a top-down thing. So if you want to have Latin Mass, you can have Latin Mass. If you don't, it's your decision. He's not going to make it some edict from the Vatican. I think, if I'm correct, I've been told by someone close to the show that the Vatican was closing down charismatic churches. So there is a strain of the charismatic movement within the Catholic Church. If you know a lot about church, that probably sounds a little weird. That's more for that's certainly, you would think it's a Protestant thing. It's a Pentecostal Assemblies of God, that kind of thing. There has been a long time charismatic movement within the Catholic Church. It's definitely a minority. And from what I heard, someone in the Vatican was shutting that down. I don't know if it was Francis himself or somebody else. So I'm hoping that gets quashed as well. And those groups, those Catholics within the Catholic Church are allowed to practice how they see fit to worship and speak to God. So
I don't even know what a charismatic Catholic Church would look like.
What?
I don't even know what a charismatic Catholic Church would look like.
I imagine they
just get down on their knees and stand back up one extra time. They're like, oh, that's a little too charismatic for us.
Well, I don't know. Might need to have a conversation with somebody who can probably fill us in on that. I imagine it's because they're open to speaking in tongues and things
I was like,
that.
no shot. We take them to a charismatic church, like a Protestant church, and they are thinking that's the same thing.
Well, yeah, but even within the charismatic Protestant movement, there's wide swaths of. There's the snake holders, as you like to bring up, and then there's.
Hey, I haven't brought them
and
up
then
in
there's
at
just
least 6 months.
There's people who claim that they're charismatic, and all that really is a hoity-toity term for being a little more boisterous in their worship, but it's not really charismatic. So so far so good. It looks pretty good. He looks pretty like a good appointment. So he's young for a pope. He's 69, so he's probably got 20 years at it. So might end up being as consequential as Pope John Paul II. Ratzinger, who was before Francis, didn't serve long, and the first pope to abdicate. So his reign was immaterial, and Francis's I don't think lasted long enough. And I think he was too much of a change agent for his age to be effective, and I think he was just doomed to fail. So there have been reports that there was going into the process. There was a priest who was a Francis, very much in line with Francis from the Philippines, and a lot of people thought he was going to get the job. And I think there was somebody from Africa somewhere, and then another person from South America somewhere, which Ratzinger kind of holds both. He's American, but he was serving in Peru. I think his last major stop was in Peru, where he was running the church there. And he's only been in the Cardinal of Cardinals for like a year and a half. So he is like Tom Brady. He's just like, all right, I've drafted this guy. Now he's going to be our quarterback for 20 years. So there's reports that there was a lot of politicking going on. It was kind of like Lincoln getting elected. Like nobody could get over the line between the 3 or 4 candidates and Bishop Dolan, who I think is the bishop from New York. I don't think it's Boston. It's New York. Was the influential person who got the deal done. That was according to an Italian Rome-based newspaper. So seems like a good source, but who knows? So anyway, we're not Catholic, but it's a big deal. And unlike a lot of Protestants, I consider the Catholic Church part of the Church Big C. So interesting times for them ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, and I said it on Saturday when we were discussing this, I do think that the election of an American pope is strategic by the Catholic Church. I don't think that anybody. We have to understand that there is a political climate and power that these people have.
Oh, you're being kind. The people in the Vatican are 100%. They're as much politicians as everybody in Washington D.C. or Brussels.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean they're secular people, but their decisions are not being guided by the Holy Spirit. Give me a break. It's 100% political.
Yeah, and so I do believe that this particular pope was a political move. I don't think he was a favorite going in. I think he might have been one of the heftier camps or whatever, but I think that one of the things that was a part of that conversation in the room was people were feeling like, or that group of cardinals felt like they needed a stronger presence in the United States political spectrum. And so I think that was a huge part of the election of this pope. So I don't know what that means necessarily for our country or whatever. And for those of you that aren't a part of the Catholic Church, or those that aren't a part of that in particular, just know that, I mean, I'm not sitting there and saying that the Pope is all of a sudden going to have an influence over Donald Trump, but I would not be surprised if there became like, you see the Pope in the United States a lot more frequently, trying to, push certain things in the United States. But again, that's just how that works. It's how that goes.
I think you're correct. There was discussion going in the intervening period between when Francis died and them convening the college of whatever it is.
The Cardinals, yeah.
that the church was at a crossroads where it could either lean into a pope who's from areas where the church is growing, which is Asia and Africa. I don't know if South America is still growing. I mean, it's pretty dense, but it's certainly, I hear two different competing things. I hear Africa is where the church is growing the most, and I hear Asia. Africa does make more sense, but I've heard both. Either way, that they were going to lean into someone who represents where the church is growing, and then a sense that is already being taken care of. It's being done. It's happened without a pope from those areas. It'll continue to happen. And what they wanted was a pope from either Europe or America, where they're losing traction. And the hope was appointing a pope from that area would kind of stop the bleeding. And so to say that they picked an American in order to stop the bleeding of the Catholic Church in the United States, I think is probably one of many reasons, but probably a big one. And if you're hearing this and thinking, understand Protestant denominations are the same. This isn't a Catholic thing. When the Southern Baptist Convention gets together to pick a new leader, it's just as political. There's not a bunch of people sitting in a room praying for 3 days and fasting, trying to figure out who's going to actually be the proper spiritual leader of the Southern Baptist Convention. It's a political thing. I can tell horror stories from my childhood where my parents and grandparents were involved in the United Pentecostal Church, and literally like mob level things were being done against where people's grown-ass children were putting sand in gasoline tanks of people who were going to vote against their father for the new head of the Pentecostal Church. So this kind of stuff, it's wherever the church has created man-made institutions to govern them, they run like man-made institutions. And so, these are basically run like any other political institution where politics takes over. And no, they can tell you that this is some great spiritual thing to leap for the great new, in the Catholic Church's instance, the new Peter to fall in line, the new Peter of the 21st century, the next in line, in the direct line to going all the way back to Peter to lead the church. No, it's not that. Sorry. This is a guy in charge of, the church has to say politically, hopefully maybe power broke things between countries and manage one of the world's largest real estate ventures. So, and making sure we have people to put into those buildings. So it's good. And I look, on the one hand, I think it's silly if there's growth in the American church because we got an American pope. That shouldn't be the animation. But people are people, including Christians, including Catholic Christians. And so if this gets people animated because one of their kind is now the Pope and it gets them back in church on Sundays and it leads to some sort of spiritual revival, then good. My one purely negative comment is there are reports that he covered up some priest sexual misbehavior in both Peru and in, I think, Chicago, somewhere in the United States. And I think those reports are based on what Catholic watchdog groups are saying, and they're not anti-Catholic watchdog. They're Catholics or former Catholics who are acting as watchdogs over the church's handling of church priest sexual misbehavior. So I think they're the ones making those accusations. So I take them with a little bit of grain of salt, but not a full grain of salt. And so if that's the case, it's a little troubling. But at this point, if I'm being honest, I don't know that anybody who's of the age to be considered for the Pope doesn't have dirty hands when it comes to covering up pedophiles and rapists in the church. So we'll see about that, but that would be my only major criticism. So, all right, well, we just dumped on Catholics. Too bad Nolan wasn't here. Well, I guess before we do that, let's do beer number 2.
beer number 2 coming out of Russian River. If you haven't heard of these guys, they make some beer. They do an experimental IPA series called or actually it's just an experimental beer series, because this last time we went, they had R&D and it was a Pilsner, but R&D is their experimental beer series. This one is a hazy IPA. They're all hazy because they don't take time filtering. Because again, it's just really taste the flavor kind of stuff. And so smells so good. This one is called Bring Back Brewers Gold. They made it a standalone beer on their menu because it was so good and people kept asking for it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
I love it.
They made a joke about it and said, Bring Back Brewers Gold, because it was a Brewers Gold hop that they use. And so I tried it at the tap house. I'll try it again right now. I do remember it being very grapefruit flavor profile.
It's grapefruit, but it's not really bitter though.
It's not terrible.
Grapefruit flavor, but not grapefruit bitter.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, Tim's going to like this one.
6.5%. Yeah, baby.
Well, it's Russian River, man. By the way,
I do hope that you and I brew enough beer, and yes, Nolan's involved too. Sorry, Nolan. Nolan's been sick and busy, so he hasn't been able to be in on the ground floor of this, but he will be involved.
Yeah, 100%.
I hope we get to a point where we brew enough beer and then get our own recipes where we get our own particular flavor profile.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Like Russian River has theirs, Belching Beavers has theirs. I would say Stone does. Stone's just got that classical floral kick-ass West Coast thing kind of still.
Humble Sea
has their very nice boring one. So that would be cool. But at this point, that's the one thing about the class that it's a criticism, but I don't know how you would do this. We didn't learn anything about hops in terms of flavors. Like, we got to smell them one night. But I think I would take maybe, there's some stuff in that class that I don't think is useful. Like,
we did learn a lot about barley and its flavor.
And I said, and that's where I would say hops is, if you could somehow take a beer and say, all right, here's a part of that's an IPA thing, and it's not an IPA class. So that's part of the problem. But it would be kind of cool to take like an IPA class. Maybe we can give this suggestion to Chris.
But hops are one of the 4 key ingredients in making a beer.
I know,
every beer has hops in it.
But IPAs are where the hops shine, whereas other beers, like, it's subtle in the darker beers. It's even a little subtle. It's just more subtle in everything else. It would be cool to put like 5 different beers in front of you and be able to say, all right, that one's Cascade hops, that one's Nelson hops, that one's Oaxaca hop, or not Oaxaca, whatever that one is. Anyway, so you start to learn like, oh, okay, this is, so if I make a beer and I'm really heavy with this is the kind of flavor I'm going to get. So, but again, probably easier said than done.
100%.
This is fantastic. Everybody listening, we did already come up with a brewery though. So, although we have no intention of I'm not going to say we're never going to own a brewery, but we have no intention of opening a brewery. But we do want to brew enough beer where we can slap a label on it, say it's from us, and go to brew fests and maybe pour beer at weddings and fundraisers and stuff.
Yeah, I got a lot of life ahead of me, so there's a lot that I could definitely do with it.
Maybe I'll get Icon sold. That'll give us the money.
There we go.
Get enough money to buy the house and then pay off the house and then get Danica beach house so she can go to the beach and we stay home and brew beer all the time. She'll be happy.
I just sent you More Beer has a hop breakdown. They have like at least 3 descriptions on every single.
Oh, cool.
Hop,
all right, well, that's good.
Hop flavor. So at
still, though, I stands a reason though. I still think it's good for the glass. Where you stick
100%.
your nose into a glass and say, "All right, now I know." Even without trying a beer, okay, that's probably leaning
right.
Cascade.
I want to make one that's just all pine flavors.
I've thought about it.
And then call it like the Wilderness or something, and then put like quotes from Walden around it. I went into the woods to learn how to make
on
better
Hop
beer.
Grove on Hop Grove Pond.
Yeah. I went into the woods to learn how to make better beer, to find out that at the end of my life, I had not found out that I had truly lived or whatever.
Yeah, so we're already coming up with really good. I sent you that thing. So that thing I sent you today
Yeah.
of the two hop
Is
heads.
that just AI generated?
It was eight, but what I did was I was thinking, I was listening to Black Crows and I heard Twice as Hard, and I was like, oh, that'd be a really good name for a double
Nice, there you
IPA. So I took the Black Crows logo and dumped it into Chat GPT and said, replace the two crows with hop heads, and this is what, and it came back with it in like 2 seconds. I was like,
That's awesome.
boom! Now we have a double IPA.
That's right.
All right, let's do the stupid church fight in Nashville. Did you get a chance to read that article?
I'm going to read it right now.
All right, there we go.
I was like, did I see this? That was the thing that you sent me. But
All right, I don't know how much this is. I'm going to read this thing. This is via the Wall Street Journal a month ago. If you don't know who Amy Grant is, then you can go to hell.
see, I wasn't able to view it because you sent it in like notes or something.
And it didn't share the note?
It says like I need to sign into iCloud with your Apple account before you
that's
can
dumb.
open the shared note. I was like, what?
Can you read it now?
I'm trying. I got to sign in security stuff.
So Amy Grant's at one time, Amy Grant was Christian music, 80s and early 90s. And
Rebecca St. James, what?
Music changed, and then she got divorced, and that kind of put a pause on her career. Although she might have stopped already by then to have a family. I don't remember. But very, very prominent Christian worship musician, singer in the 80s, early to mid 90s. So this is, again, Wall Street Journal. Amy Grant says church founded by her great-grandfather is victim of, quote, steeple-jacking businessmen controlling the property, denies allegations, blah, blah, blah. What's the subheadline? It has the makings of a country ballad, a famous singer battling for control of a beloved church in the heart of America's music capital. Amy Grant, the 6-time Grammy winner whose hits span pop and Christian music, is fighting to save the church, founded by her great-grandfather, Nashville, Tennessee civic leader A.M. Burton. The red brick building for decades served as the thriving Central Church of Christ, boasting hundreds of members. Now boarded up, it is the focus of a year-long legal dispute as Grant and relatives try to restore Burton's legacy. At the center are allegations businessman Sean Mathis took control of the church and its assets, totaling millions, by pushing out longtime members and installing a handful of supporters who are paid from church coffers, an effort Burton descendants call steeplejacking. They want the building to be used for charitable purposes, such as homeless shelters. Mathis called the allegations meritless and says the church is engaged in mission work supporting Church of Christ congregations worldwide, including via online ministry, according to a statement by his lawyer. Attempts to control the building and oust Mathis. Oh, that's, I think, sorry, I copied the article from Apple News in my notes. I think that was a caption under a photo. Nashville is sometimes called the Protestant Vatican. I've literally never heard that in my entire life.
Yeah, me neither.
Or the Bible Belt's buckle. Yep, never. Come on, Nashville getting a little too big for your Wranglers. Remains replete with churches of different denominations, and many, such as those connected to the Church of Christ, with none. Central stood out, aiming to help the poor. It offered, along with Christian preaching, food, education, daycare, housing, and a free library. It broadcast sermons across Middle Tennessee on a radio station Burton founded. The church's county deed stated the building was to remain a Church of Christ worship site. If that purpose ceased, the property would revert to Burton's estate. When Burton died in 1966, he had given much of his wealth to Christian institutions and other charities. Amy Grant, then 5 years old, grew up learning about his legacy, blah, 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 blah. Church went downhill, blah, 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 blah. As Nashville boomed, the church's real estate value, tax exempt as a house of worship, grew exponentially. Building, excluding parking lots, is worth 6.7 according to a 2024 assessment. Flourishing suburbs drew congregants away. Central membership dwindled to a few dozen, mostly elderly people. Andy Burton, 73, Grant's cousin, and a local dentist named after his grandfather, remembers the elder, blah, blah, blah. And 22. Sorry, I'm skipping down. After he made repeated calls, Sean Mathis, this is the guy who's supposedly supposedly charlatan. Sean Mathis responded, wanting to know why Burton was inquiring. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Burton recalled, and he kept saying, is this an adversarial call? He was real defensive. Mathis, in a statement, said the congregation in 2018 adopted a resolution to merge and convert itself to Nashville Church of Christ, a Tennessee-based nonprofit organization. Howell Towns, now 78, met his wife, Janet Towns, at the church where they grew up. They raised their daughter there, and for decades, Howell served as the church volunteer treasurer. Towns welcomed Mathis and his wife when they appeared one Sunday in 2017 and quickly became members. Mathis, in his late 40s, impressed congregants, referencing his business success, multiple degrees, and global connections. Towns' views changed as Mathis inquired about the church's finances and pushed to become an elder. Within months, Mathis controlled the board and sought big changes. I could keep going on. I think that's the gist of it. I mean, there's more negative. I could read more about this Mathis clown who's gotten control of the church. He does seem like a charlatan. He's started fake universities and a healthcare startup. Yeah, that's got fraud written all over it. Okay, so why do I bring that up? That article, well, one, just in general, that article resonated because, I mean, that's what's happening to a lot of churches all around the country. I mean, not literally that, but the passage, understand, one of the reasons why when we talk about the number of churches closing down every year, part of that is not just because they don't have the right pastor or anything. It's just literally just demographics. And a lot of times those demographics aren't just because people are dying. It's because they are suffering from the same demographic change that inner cities are seeing with education, shutting down of factories, all those other things.
Right.
When I was in high school and then in college, and then first couple years in college, when I was staying at home living with my parents, we went to a very prominent Presbyterian church in Hollywood Presbyterian, very old, in the mid 20th century. A woman had come out of there and she started the Campus Crusade movement, I think it was, or Youth for Christ movement. It was Youth for Christ. That movement came out of that church. When we were there was a pastor. The pastor was Lloyd Ogilvie. He's a very well-known celebrity pastor, but the guy preached like nobody's business. He did not act like a celebrity, but he was I would call him a celebrity pastor. He was on television. His show was shown all around the country. When the Republicans took control of the House in the big Gingrich Revolution in '94, he was named as the chaplain for the House or the Senate. I can't remember which one. But early in the early '90s, my dad was studying missions work, I think, at Fuller Seminary, and he and a group of other people at Hollywood Presbyterian got together with leadership of the church and said, you've got to reorient this church, and where its focus is, you're in the middle of a 90% Hispanic neighborhood, and by Hispanic, not Mexican. It was recent Central American immigrants, like one generation or less than a generation immigrants.
Right.
Everyone in that church was driving in from Glendale and Burbank and Pasadena and all of these Tony neighborhoods around where they had used to live in Hollywood or near Hollywood and moved out into the what had been suburbs, but if you're in Los Angeles, they're not suburbs anymore. It's just part of the urban sprawl. But they're 30 minutes to an hour away from the church that they're actually going to. They have zero connection with the people in the neighborhood that surrounds the church. And my dad and my mom and dad and a group of other families were very adamant that as much as we love this church needs to pivot to be meeting the needs of the people that are literally walking past it on a daily basis.
Right.
That discussion went nowhere because the Presbyterian Church is it's much more like the Catholic Church. It does have a hierarchy. The PCUSA, Presbyterian Church USA, owns the property that each church is at. They choose who the pastor is. They have a lot of strict rules. If you're an associate pastor at a Presbyterian church, you are by rule not allowed to succeed the pastor who's retiring. You have to move on. You are not allowed to be there. There's reasons for it. I think in the end, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's one of those rules. It's like sounds good, but the rigidity ends up getting in the way sometimes, and you end up making as many bad decisions as the one you're trying to. Anyway, that is the problem. A lot of churches this is the problem in particular. High church Protestant churches have dealt with, but you could also say this about Baptist churches. Any churches that have been in the inner city, there were prominent churches, and everyone moved away. We're left with a building and what to do with it.
Yeah,
that's problem number one. And it's good to understand that because it is, I think a lot of times we cite statistics about how churches are closing down and people are leaving the church and yada yada, but particularly churches are closing down. And the implication is churches are closing down because people are leaving the church when it is they're leaving that church. And they've now going to the sexy, new, shiny new thing around the corner it's not even that. They don't want to get up and drive to the old church, and it's much more convenient to get everybody up and going in the morning when they're 10 minutes away versus 45 minutes away. And also, you don't live in that neighborhood. I think there's something to be said about, I don't live in that neighborhood anymore. It's not meeting the needs of or it shouldn't be meeting the needs of me. It should be meeting the needs of those who are nearby.
Right.
So there's that. My problem with this article is there seems to be a lot of legacy motivation here.
Sure.
And if I'm being brutally honest, legacy should not be the motivation. Jesus doesn't give a damn, and neither should you, about great-grandpappy's legacy.
Right.
And I think this is where there's clearly some legal things going on. Like if he said that church had to remain a church unless if his will and all that those are legal battles. And it does sound like this clown who took it over is a charlatan who's looking to use the church, but that's expected. The church is always easy pickings for charlatans who want to come in and see a good deal and take advantage of a bunch of Christian yokels. So that's nothing new.
Right.
And unfortunately, Church Inc. is nothing new. It's maybe more acute in this day and age, but that's nothing new either. But I do think, I grew up on Amy Grant. I know her music. It was, at the time, it met the needs of, it was what Christian music was at the time. Doing this for the sake of don't do it because of your grandpa. And maybe this article is written poorly written. Maybe if we got her on the show, she'd say it's not. When I say legacy, what I mean is not for the Grant family. What I mean is it's meeting the needs of the neighborhood, which is what my great grandfather did, and this church is no longer doing that.
Yeah, that may be it.
So I'm just thinking of that myself right now. So that's my one thought. My second thought is reading something like that. I've been very honest on the show. We've spoken about a lot of times about our experience at the previous church, the issues that we had with finding a new pastor and trying to realign the church and mission and vision and things like that. And when I read something like this, I think I actually ruminated on this for a couple days, not because this is like some still trauma that's I'm dealing with, but just, one
gotta
wants
let
to
it go,
learn
too.
lessons from mistakes people make. And I'm glad that I left the church we were at, because if I had stayed, I think I myself and maybe a few other people like our late friend Sean could have turned into that guy instead of who we and insisting on change for change's sake and making things worse.
Yeah, I think that that's really easy to fall into. I don't think that that's something that we could sit there and say is far-fetched. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, and even I have pushback on our church just for change sake. I was like, what I talk trash about the fact that it's like, yeah, I don't want to go while they're doing like family sermon every single
Right.
week. Like there's certain things where it's like,
Danique and I didn't go. I didn't even bother watching online. I'm like, I don't need sermons on family stuff. Like, so
this was the last week apparently.
yeah. Thank God.
So it's just, like that's how it goes. I mean, we've talked about it on this show. Like, I think it's hard getting people back into church after COVID. I think that there are lots of different people that are experiencing different things when it comes to just, COVID, and like with the church. And I mean, we're going to kind of talk about it when it comes to this idea of it's not as there's so much emphasis on making this such an inviting environment nowadays, but I don't know if it's as inviting as people, like church people, make it seem like it is. Like, I don't know if the 21st century model of church, as we knew it at the beginning of the 21st century versus now, and especially post COVID, I don't know if church looks the same moving forward. Like, we talked about how the iPhone changed everything in 2007. I do believe that the epidemic changed things, because I know that there's a lot of people that are like, we have, this idea that, people want to go back out there and interact with one another, but people don't interact the same as they used to. We've changed the way that we interact with one another. And so this huge church setting nowadays, I think it might be extremely intimidating, to which a lot of people are going back into. And that's the part that I want to talk about, where we're talking about how, everything is, and how it, the church people coming back and stuff. I don't know, like this is a statement. So I'm somebody who went to school with an iPhone in my pocket. And I think I've talked about this in 2013 is when I graduated high school. So the iPhone had been out for 6 years. And we could sit there and say that we devolved for a long period of time. But I also was a high school teacher in the year 2019, pre-COVID. And when we came back, we're still seeing the residual effects of that. Kids legitimately don't socialize out. Like when they go out for brunch or they go out for lunch or breaks or whatever, they don't socialize with one another. They just sit there on their phones in their friend groups. It's wild to me. But that's how we are consuming time with each other. Like, they believe that that is spending time together. That's their perception of that. And I think that, honestly, if I look at how things are going to move forward post epidemic, I think that the church is actually, if it continues down this path of what it is right now, that the church is going to be in for a huge shock, because I think that people have realized that they can go without socialization and survive. And we missed it. And we craved it, but we have had it for such a long time that we know what it looks like, but they aren't responding to it. And now it's taken on a new form, into which church is going to become the new Xbox live sessions where you don't go over to a friend's house and all of your buddies bring TVs over and you all hook up Xboxes or whatever, or you play couch co-op. It's now going to be everybody's in their own house doing their own thing. And so because everybody's going to be for the exact same reason where it's like, why would I go over there when I could just have this at home or where I can do this here or whatever? And I know that we're sitting there and we're saying that this is what we've offered for so long. And what we've talked about is the thing that why you should go to church is this sense of community or whatever. But the sense of community is now a Discord channel. The sense of community for kids now is completely online and it's not in a room together. My kids don't hang out with each other every single day, or they don't go to each other's houses. They stay home. They don't know. Like I've asked them, like, have you ever stayed the night? They're like, no, why would I stay the night at my friend's house? Like that's a foreign concept to them, which is a foreign concept to me that would be a foreign concept.
Yeah.
But
I was out of the house all the time.
But that's how socializing is nowadays for them at that age. And that's the future that we are building up towards. And it's not. And so if you think that it's bad now where there's not a lot of people that are going to come in or where we feel like, and I still believe as much as you believe that I think that we are on the cusp of a renaissance, but I'm saying that those buildings are not going to be churches for, I don't think that the church is going to be a building anymore. I think that sometime in the next 25 years, 30 years, and I've never thought the church is a building, but I'm saying that all these places that are churches and have their doors open, they're going to find that they're going to get that the days of counting on the boomers and the Gen Xers and even the older millennials to pay for their bills to keep those doors open are going to be dwindling further and further down the line. I was like, you're almost going to have, and I don't necessarily think that it's the best thing either, and people are going to have to figure it out, but you're going to have TikTok, YouTube church sessions. That's how people are going to consume church. And I know that seems sacrilegious to us because we're so like, we don't find community in that, but kids go into the chats with that and they talk with one another, with each other. And they sit there and they they find community in that, which is weird. I mean, I'm not saying it's a foreign concept to me. I'm pre-YouTube. I was born before YouTube. So the way I view the world is completely different. I wasn't an iPad baby, but we're now seeing the iPad babies grow up. And I think that the epidemic allowed for those iPad babies to sit there and say, I don't need human interaction. Not in the way that we had it before, where they can have human interaction by themselves with other humans. So I don't know. And that's just talking about like the whole like building concepts, like these churches. Like, yeah, I do believe this whole thing with the charlatan, that kind of stuff. But I'm also talking about the kind of what we talked about on the show several times, that the world is shifting and the church has to shift. And again, I don't necessarily think that this is what's best for people. I don't think it's what's best for Americans, but I do see, and I don't even necessarily feel like it's a pessimistic view. It's just a different view than how I view the world. Because the kids love the way that this whole thing is. I have kids hanging out in my classroom. They plug in headphones and sit next to each other, and that's them hanging out. They don't even engage with each other. They don't talk, but they're best friends. That's what they say. And it's not like they're wanting quiet time or something like that. No, that is how they hang out.
It's hard for me. I don't know that I disagree. I mean, it's hard to disagree. One of the things I do, let's just assume everything. Everything in the article that's said is just, let's assume it's accurate in some way. I do like the fact that the Grant family seems to be stressed that this thing needs to be not just go back to where it needs to be a church that's in the middle of downtown Nashville, but is actually providing things. And in that sense, I think that's where a lot of these churches need to transition. You're not there for Sundays, you're there for the other 6 days, and you're filling in the gap where local government isn't, or they're filling in the gap, but they're doing it coldly or badly or just inefficiently, and you're there with more of a smile and a...
But then what makes them different from... So are we saying that all churches should then become lighthouse rescue missions?
No, I would say, I think we're getting to where the idea of church, I think we're already there. We don't, well, we're at the PAX church. we're at the peak of church attendance, and that's even including dwindling. But I think, not foreign to anybody who's been listening to us, particularly since the beginning, church isn't going to be one thing anymore. Going to church isn't going to be the phrase that it was for probably most of us who were listening to this show, where it means you're going on Sunday. I think largely you're correct. That's where society's going. If I'm a 25-year-old seminary student and I'm looking to get into ministry, and maybe I've got friends in Silicon Valley, what I look to do is, yes, the trajectory is towards what you're describing, Colton. But the hipster movement was a rejection of the first generation of technology.
Yeah.
That was, I don't like that. I'm going back to where I think America had a genuine, the days of my grandfather, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, where things were
evolved version of transcendentalism.
Yeah, like things were great, organic and real, and I felt like a connection to people and the earth. That was at first. I think there's going to be another hipster movement, and so you could resonate that way by having a church or a series of churches. And I think what that means is not church the way we do it now. It is leaning into what younger millennials and Gen Z want to say they want to be involved in, which is making a difference. And so that church it's just a soup kitchen and maybe a place for someone to want to do a Bible study during the week, or teaching English as a second language, helping people get through the visa process, that kind of thing. I agree with you that church, I said this to our friend Gilbert 10 years ago. I said, mega churches are going to be, really big churches are going to be the only thing that really exists in a while. And he pushed back. I haven't asked him that question again if he still believes that, because I know how hard it is for him to find pastors for small churches. So
yeah,
I think there's always going to be a place where people want to go and feel like they're part of the thing, and they're going to go, and it's going to be Barnum and Bailey on Sunday. But I think largely, yeah, everyone else is going to be finding that Christian community. Well, and if that sounds shocking to you, that's really no different than the early church. I mean, if we can get back to an equilibrium where you have, as long as you have a group of Christians that you're comfortable with and you're meeting with on a regular basis, and everything's not just shits and giggles, but there's intermixing of serious conversation. When somebody gets sick, people show up at the door with food and are ready to step in, or someone dies, everyone's there to be there. You have that group of people. That's what church is.
Right.
And just as the church did in literally the New Testament, where they get letters from Paul, yes, you go online and you find what seems to be reasonable, discerning people who are giving you something, a reasonable interpretation of the Bible, and you get knowledge of this book, this strange book that you're reading from them. It is literally the first church. It does not have to be a dude standing in front of you who's getting paid $120,000 a year to say something he said 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Or regurgitate what Rick Warren said. That's not really an efficient way to do this.
Oh, Rick Warren. Getting hate from the Go to Hell podcast.
And you know, that doesn't, church has not changed any more or less. church is literally the same in that situation.
Right.
Church right now is what you get out of it. So if you want to show up and listen to some guy wax on about the New Testament and misquote a Greek word and tell you that that's what that word means, and it's not really, and bungles the whole thing and the meaning of it, yeah, you know what? You can do that now going online. And if you really want to get into the Bible, you can do that. You can get into it. You can buy all the books you want. You can go onto YouTube and see other people go in depth for literally a year about a book of the Bible and dig in and say this word isn't actually is. It's a passive tense instead of a present tense. You can do all of that still. You can do that at church with a bunch of people who go through a book, or you can do that online or in your living room. This is all venue driven.
Yes.
So I'm sure that story is just one of many examples. She's famous, and so it's got her name written around it. So I think that's what you're getting at. This is just one of a lot of stories going around where a church has died. It's sitting around doing nothing, and somebody doesn't want to get rid of it, or someone's using it for some malfeasance, and it's not really an efficient use of money and resources. I mean, honestly, if you got a church in downtown Nashville, turn it into a Christian honky tonk.
Nice. That is what they should do.
Yeah, I mean, have Bible thumpers behind the bar, making sure they're not overpouring people. You do church on Sunday. You do gospel theme night on Wednesday. Randy Travis come in and sing old gospel hymns. Think outside the box. Have somebody stumble in from Luke Bryant's honky tonk and what's this all about? Oh, Christians are actually kind of cool.
That's right. We are. We know how to party. We also know how to make beer.
We do. Have a Nashville mead on tap.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So, let me say once again, I do think it was important for me to leave. I did think at the time, I need to leave here. I'm trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and maybe I'm the problem. Not that I was wrong. I don't think it's an issue of right or wrong on either side, that the church was wrong and I was right, or I was wrong and the church was right. I was wrong, the church was right. It's just things weren't someone needed to give up on creating conflict.
Right.
And there were other reasons why I left, which I won't go into because that's personal shots at people. But I think that was an important way for me to walk away and feel like, no, I owe a responsibility to leave and then therefore not let ego really get in the way. Because that then allowed me to leave. And when people ask why I left, be very honest in being magnanimous about it, not being dishonest and falsely magnanimous. It also prevented me from walking away and being bitter and said, if they'd only listen to me, everything would be going great and all the things you're complaining about wouldn't happen. It kept me out of that trap. And so in that sense, that's Holy Spirit and discernment. I would think that's not me just letting me know, like, it's time for you to go. Paul had the same sit down. I'm not to compare myself to Paul.
Are you comparing yourself?
I am not comparing myself to Paul. But if we're going to use where we use the Bible as a good example, Paul had the same moment. He's going around screaming and yelling, preaching at Jews, and God finally says, like, dude, they're not going to listen to you. The Jews and the Christians are not going to listen to you. The Jews think you betrayed them, and the Christians are fully aware of your persecution. You need to go to the Gentiles who don't know who the hell you are. So go preach to them.
That's right.
All right. Next topic. And I haven't prepped Colton for this at all. As it should be.
I thought it was going to be the topic that we had discussed, but all right. I like it.
Hopefully this isn't too long. Dave Smith, comedian. He's got his own podcast. Talks a lot about politics. He's been in the news quite a bit. He's a funny guy. He was on Tucker Carlson this week, and he said multiple times during the show that he used to be atheist and he's now not atheist. And towards the end of the show, Tucker asked him, can I ask you why and when you stopped being an atheist? And he, answered, birth of my first child.
Oh, wow.
And he said, really? And he said, yes. My wife was in labor. I needed to do an epidural, so they asked him to step out. And that was an interesting conversation because I've never been in that situation.
Yeah, you do have to step out.
You do have to step out, and he explained why. Because apparently it's not a natural process, so they want you to step out because if you don't know what's going on, you probably betray a look of shock and horror to your wife who's having it done to them, and then she freaks out, and so they need her to remain calm while you're doing this to her spine.
Oh, that's funny.
You might fall down and crack your head on the floor too. Anyway, so he left out of the room, and apparently there were some complications during her pregnancy, and so he's worried about that. And so he said for the first time in his life, he prayed to God. He said, I even bargained with him. I said, God, if you keep her healthy and the baby's healthy, I'll do this and this and this. And he said it wasn't just that. He said he felt an immediate connection to a being infinitely bigger than him and the universe, and it was there with him to give him comfort. And Dave, his name's Dave Smith, but he's Jewish. Both of his parents are Jewish. Ever grew up in a religious home, and so he has believed in God since then. And he says he prays every day. He says, I don't pray for myself. I pray for the health of my family and for people who are going through problems and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, could it be that one of the reasons why I don't think what happened to Dave is an uncommon occurrence. And I would say even a lot of people who grew up in the church didn't have that. There are even a lot of people who grew up in the church who had said they were believers, but didn't have that kind of connection until a moment like that.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I wondered if one of the reasons why, it's not the reason, but a significant enough reason that the amount of people who claim to be nuns, because I don't, when someone says they're an atheist, just full disclosure, I don't believe them. There's really, the number of people who are true atheists is like 0.00001% of the population. They're like physicists or something or like so scientifically minded. But I think most people who claim they're atheists aren't. They're just deists, or they're what we call nuns. They just don't think about it.
Yeah. Not Catholic nuns.
I wonder if the drop in religious thinking and belief and open believing in God is because of the huge increase in people not having children and affluent people having children. Because in this country, it is affluent people who are not having children. Middle and lower middle class and lower class people are still having children at the same rate. It is middle class to rich where the birth rate has dropped. And I wonder if that's part of it, is not having this moment where you have this thing has been created, this from you and your significant other, your spouse, whatever, and just this moment of awe that then really kind of does give you this transcendent religious moment of like, yeah, there's something much bigger in this world than the universe and me and everybody living in it.
Yeah. I think that, I don't think that there is a lot of things that could be said against what it is that you're saying. I think, I don't know, it's difficult I think it's difficult for us when we look at our world and we look at us and how we perceive God. I don't know, like, again, there's that kind of profound moment like what you're talking about where you're able to sit there and say, yes, this is God in this particular moment. I don't know. I push back on some of that sometimes and not that I disagree or anything like that. I think that we're just in a time and in our world that we've just never. The reason why we get compared to the Romans as Americans is because of. Sorry, my alarm's going off to tell me to get off technology for the evening, but I'm on this podcast.
The show's over. Go to hell.
Yeah. So the reason why we get compared to the Romans so often is because of, again, we are seeing this hierarchy. Like when we look at the hierarchy of needs, we are at this kind of stage where we are trying to achieve self-actualization. And so we are creating problems for ourselves in this attempt to get to the self-actualization that we've never experienced before. And so like if you're sitting there and your basic needs aren't being met, it's one of those things where
Well, Jesus speaks of this. It's harder for a rich man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of that whole concept where, again, so when we talk about how many people out there are atheists nowadays, you are wrestling with things that you have a luxury to wrestle with.
Yes.
It is. And again, it's much easier for a poor man to enter the kingdom of heaven than a rich man, right? Because again, a poor man is sitting there and he's like, I'm praying for fucking rain on my crops out here in fucking South America, so that way I can live.
Yeah.
Like, it's not for me to sell this to somebody. No, I need this grain to feed my family.
I can't afford the medicine that's going to save my kid. The only thing I got is to pray that a miracle happens.
Right. Exactly. And we don't have a lot of those moments as Americans.
Oh, I agree with you there. I would say affluence is more important, but I think affluence with no children is steroids on not needing to believe in anything.
Yeah, and so
because you're not caring for anything. I mean, yeah, your two dogs don't count. Those aren't your children. But I think to be affluent and then now you got to care for something, and it's beyond just now. It's like you have to. I mean, you've talked about it. It's one thing to be a pacifist, but you got to, to grapple with someone might actually come in your house and threaten your kid, now your two children, and your wife. I don't know how I'm actually going to deal with that in the moment. Maybe my lizard brain kicks in and I do something that seems abhorrent to me or, against my principles. But
well, that's why I don't really care for, like, I like Ricky Gervais. I think that he's really funny, but I don't really care for his anti, Christian kind of stance. I don't mind his anti-Christian stance. I think that it's fairly common, but he kind of puts out these things where I'm like, okay, that's like and I get it. I think for him, he's grown up in a dominantly Christian culture, and he's been given very surface level stuff, and he's like, well, that seems kind of bonehead answers for things, and I don't blame him for questioning any of that, because yeah, those are really dumb, but it's like, okay, that's like the most shallow thing that you're going after.
I think Ricky's animated by hypocrisy, and I think he sees religious people or the church.
Yeah, but also I view that as very surface level.
Sure, Ricky's very intelligent, but he deals in a lot of straw men.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, okay, so you can go after that. That's fine. But again, it kind of speaks to this where it's like, again, you're coming from this whole place of luxury kind of thing where it's like, you get to
the Sam Harris view of the world is a purely modern luxury to believe in what he believes. So,
but this is how the world works now. Again, until there is until the Gauls come and sack Rome.
Yeah.
So until nuclear winter happens and we go into another dark age, what we have right now is we have people that are trying to reach self-actualization. And so through that, there are depression, anxiety. These don't exist in third world countries. Why? Because they don't have time to think about the pressure of social situation.
Yeah.
They're out there just trying to fucking provide for their family. Don't get me wrong. There are significant other stressors on them, on their bodies. That's why they don't live as long. Like there's a lot of other things going on.
You know, it's funny. I'm rewatching The Sopranos, and there's an episode where Tony's in with Dr. Milfy, and he's doing this same thing but he's doing it to justify his behavior. And he's like, well, you know, people kill, they don't deal with these issues. And he's upset because he's getting panic attacks.
Oh yeah.
He's mad at himself because he's got panic attacks, which actually kind of resonates with me. And so he's kind of ranting at her about how much of a wuss he is because he's having panic attacks and this, that, and the other. And people in most of the world don't have time to deal with that. And her response is what you just said is, okay, that is absolutely true. But modernity has created new problems that your brain is having to deal with. And it just so happens your brain right now is not handling that issue very well. And so we're here to try to reprogram your brain so that you're not having these meltdowns over weird things.
Yeah, 1,000 years from now, hopefully anxiety and depression are actually the myth that people are saying that they are.
We've conquered that problem, and not through Zoloft, not through drug, but just remember when that was a problem.
Yeah, just genetic mutation. It's where I no longer rely on my reptilian brainstem to decide how I respond to random shit.
I will say one more thing on this real quick. When I see nuns and mentioned,
you
particularly
keep
by
nuns, and I keep thinking fucking Catholic nuns. I'm just like,
oh,
what do you think when you see Catholic nuns? Like, that's literally in my brain. Like, I'm like, what are you watching? Fucking Sister Act over there? Like, what is happening?
I think it's Barna's term. That's
fine. I know.
It's actually a good thing for you because some people are probably having the same. Particularly since we talked about the Pope earlier.
Everybody's like, just stop watching
in the woods.
Just stop watching Whoopi Goldberg. Like, are you watching The View? Like, what is happening?
So nuns is a classification. I think John Barna created it, but is now generally assumed, I think, even by the two guys who did the book on youth. I can't remember their names. Basically just means it's people who claim to don't believe in anything. That is assumed by people when they read that as they're atheists. And I think that is an incorrect interpretation of what being a nun is. And what being a nun, I believe in nothing, is I don't believe in the classifications that I've grown up with. What the Protestant church, what Christianity is selling me, I don't believe in. What atheism is selling me, I don't believe either. I don't know what I believe in, but because Christianity is anti-gay marriage or it's anti-immigrant, I don't side with that team. But I think the idea that there's no God is also ridiculous. So I think that's what that term means. But it is, again, often misinterpreted as it means there's this huge rise in atheism, and it's incorrect. It is like what most people under the age of 40 are politically, which is I'm not team red and I'm not team blue. Both of them I abhor and hate, and neither one resonates with me.
Yep.
All right, last issue, unless you got anything else to say.
I think we pretty much covered it. I think everybody can connect the dots from there. And our last beer for the evening.
Didn't we have this one?
Not on the show. We drank it before class.
Oh, that's true. Oh, that's right. That's why there's only one.
That's right. I was like, tell them what it is.
It's the another Coronado. This one's fantastic. The Coronado Brewing Company Aloha Warrior American IPA, 7.2% alcohol. Oh, by the way, just quick note. We didn't get any clear answers on what the hell the difference is between an American and West Coast. It seems it's all negative. It's all, the class did not solve that problem. American IPA, 7.2% alcohol. Aloha Warrior American IPA strengthens seals families. It is in collaboration with the C4 Foundation, which
what does the C4 Foundation do?
Dedicated to the memory and principles of Charles Keating IV, the C4 Foundation offers vital assistance and resources to active duty Navy SEALs and their families through neuroscience-based programs. This beer, crafted in partnership with C4, aims to raise awareness and backing for the foundation. This is fantastic. Look, even if you're listening to this and you're leaning on the pacifist side, not really down with the military. The people in the special forces family of our military, they have bared the brunt of the last 30 years of our military intervention. They signed up for it. These are the alpha of alpha males. A lot of them married women who knew what they were signing up with, but still, I'm not for what most of the shit we've gotten ourselves involved with, but the special forces people are awesome at what they do. They've been the tip of the spear in every situation. They're gone all the time. Their combat tempo is insane. And so every bit of support I'll throw at them, and one can, even if you don't like the militarism part of it, the SEALs in particular, I mean, if you've watched any kind of show on what it means to go through the BUDS process, which was a big deal in the 2000s, there was a lot of documentaries on that, and I watched every single one of them. And it is insane what those dudes go through. So I will support anything that supports those families. We mentioned Coronado Island before. There is a Irish pub on Coronado Island, which is the Navy SEAL pub for them on the island. It is open to everyone, but when you walk in, you know you're in a Navy SEAL bar. Like I said, I've been in there 10 times probably.
Yeah.
It is not a club.
No.
They're very open, people coming in, but you know right away that your level of testosterone does not meet the level of testosterone for about 50 to 70%, depending on the night, of people around you. So
yeah, and you should, I mean, and for those of you that are listening, if you don't know that, like, basically the largest naval force in the western United States is stationed in Coronado.
Yeah, the Pacific Fleet is based mostly out of San Diego.
Yeah,
Some of it is based out of the Seattle area where the submarines come out of. A few other places here and there, but
Coronado Island has, and actually this last year I've never seen it before, because actually when you drive through Coronado, you're not actually able to see you drive. It's a military base, so everything's like walled off and everything. We were doing a boat tour of the San Diego Harbor, and so we did the San Diego Harbor and then the North Bay, which is like, it takes you up around kind of where Point Loma is, and then you come back, and then we did a South Bay tour. I kid you not, there's like 50 or 60 battleships.
Yeah.
That we went out.
They're not battleships. Well, they're technically cruisers and destroyers, but they're the size of aircraft.
There's
of
the new
battleships.
The new carrier is being built out there.
Yeah, the Enterprise.
I was like, there's a shit ton of different. There's like the medics. Ships,
there's a medical ship.
All
there.
that shit. Like
the big floating Tylenol bottle.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck? You're like going through, and I'm like, I literally thought at several points that we had reached the end of the line, and then like it curves around, and we kept going.
And and then there's south of the bridge that connects San Diego downtown to Coronado. There's a whole other shipyard where they're like retrofitting ships and stuff like that too.
I had no idea there was that much going on. Plus, there was already those weren't even. That's all in San Diego's harbor. That's not even in Coronado's harbor. Coronado's harbor has the carriers there right now, or they have a carrier. I think they have 2 carriers there right now. And so that was really crazy. It's just crazy to see. It was also Sunday, so all of the aircraft was also landed in Coronado. So we got to see they're not Blackhawks for the Navy, they're Seahawks. The Seahawks are all out there. So that was really cool. We had a flyover of they're like helicopter airplane looking things.
Oh, the Ospreys.
Yeah, those
the
were
V-22
sick.
Osprey.
We had 2 fly directly.
Yeah, those are wild.
Yeah, and like they were landing, and so we're in the harbor, or we're in the marina, and we got a fucking, they're like, you feel like you could reach out and touch them as they come in. So those were sick. So that was sick. But yeah, no idea. so what I'm trying to get here is there's a huge military presence in San Diego, if you didn't know that. And I've talked about the fact that I am a pacifist, but I have nothing but love and respect for everybody as a part of the military. I have nothing but, it's not the life I choose for myself, but, I was somebody who wanted to go into the military after high school. I was looking to go into the Air Force, go sit in a desk chair. But I
wanted to go in the Air Force Academy and fly A-10s.
Yeah, I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to actually be a helicopter pilot. But I was like, my mom kind of talked me out of it when I was growing up. That she was the type that always believed that if you went into the military, you were destined to die. Like I don't blame moms for being that way with their kids and stuff. But anyways, at the end of the day, like I have nothing but respect for those guys. I think that it's okay to sit there and say that I don't know how to sit there and say that I'm able to separate those two things in my life. I'm sitting there and saying that on a political side, on a philosophical side, I don't necessarily agree with what goes on or maybe their way of thinking in there, but there is nothing that I have against what it is that they do.
See, this is my problem.
This
is my problem with modern thought is we're not allowed to have dichotomies and be called hypocrites. Dichotomies are a part of life. Do I support the wars we've been involved with? No. Well, in retrospect, I mean, if I'm being honest, I was at the time, and it was a mistake. That does not mean that I don't have respect for the military. I do have the older I get, I'm a little had enough with how we get it with Memorial Day and some of this stuff, but
even then, it's not. I don't have problems with the veterans. Like that's not who. Like when it comes to Memorial Day, I don't have any issue with veterans. Like that's not. I don't sit there and
I think my problem is the corporatism of the Memorial Day. I don't like that.
I feel like there are veterans out there that feel the same way.
I agree.
Like I don't think that that's far-fetched or whatever.
I've talked to I know enough that have been like they don't like talking about it because they don't feel like it should be a badge of honor. It's just I did what I did, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Never have I ever thought about anything bad about those that have served.
No, we need to be able. It is okay to have dichotomies in our brains where, on the one hand, I want to minimize the amount of military conflicts we get into. I call myself a pacifist, but I understand my country's got to be able to defend itself, and so therefore I support the people who are willing to defend this country. And so
and I also
live in the world. I don't live in the world Jesus wants the world to be, and so on the one hand I have to weep and hope for the world that Jesus wants it to be, but on the other hand I can't condemn those who have to exist in the world and defend those like you and me who want that world.
And be different, and that's the hard part, or that's the rub of it is, and that's why I believe that it's important to say that you're a pacifist and work towards pacifism, is that you are actively saying that this is something that I want to be because I want to see the world change.
And you know what? I would say the average veteran, particularly one who's been in combat, would welcome our view. Because they've seen the horrors of what happens when the world can't get along and the worst happens. And they'd be like, brother, I agree with you. I mean, it's the Lieutenant Winters from Winters from Band of Brothers who just decides when this war is over, I'm going to buy a quiet plot of land and buy a farm and never be hostile to a human being for the rest of my life if I get out of World War II.
Yeah.
And I think not every vet, but I think a lot of vets are like 100%. That's the world. I've seen too much shit and nonsense and things that one thing was said why we're here and we're not, or just even justifying why we're there and what it means to do in order to defend ourselves. Like, yeah, I don't want to live. Let's get closer to a world where I don't exist.
Yep.
We don't need wolves. It's all sheep, to use the American Sniper analogy.
It's a good analogy.
All right. Last topic. Pastor Greg Boyd, theologian Greg Boyd. You want to describe Greg Boyd before? We've talked about him quite a bit, but just give everybody a refresher.
Yeah. if you're unfamiliar with Greg, and I mean Greg's kind of a hard character. I don't have a problem with Greg. He's just very progressive in his thinking, the ways that he kind of views the world. He got himself in trouble a lot and not necessarily in trouble. So he runs a church in Woodland Hills, or the church is called Woodland Hills. It's a part of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, to be exact. And he gets himself in trouble. He's just like, I don't have a better term for it other than he's progressive. He's just somebody that's looking to push the boundaries of who God is. He was really one of those original pastors that really started talking about pacifism. He's just Anabaptist.
Yeah, he's
really.
100%. He is through and through Anabaptist.
And he was raised Catholic.
So
That's how he started. And he just really tries to push the boundaries of how we understand God. He was one of those original thinkers that talked about God not being fully in control and like really trying to wrestle, and then writing like, his Princeton dissertations on the fact that God is, allowing us to choose, and what does that look like, really trying to push the boundaries of, of Calvinism.
Yeah. Calvinism. Debunking Calvinism.
Yeah. Debunking Calvinism. And so obviously that's going to get some pushback. And so that was his kind of approach. And so, and his church is fantastic. I don't know about you. There are things that have been difficult with what he's said, but nothing like hard, like things to wrestle with. I've talked about it on the show before, but one of the things that he talks about is that God doesn't have a sex. So that's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, especially when you viewed him as male your entire life.
Yeah. Well, and he's correct. And people are going to listen to this and say, well, that's not true, because he's listed as a he in the Old to New Testament. And Greg's response, and I agree with that, is those are patriarchal societies, and so they're describing God in the way they would, in the same way if you had a Bible written in the Amazon jungle.
Yep.
With Amazonian women, they would call her she. They would call God she. And so that we have this reflexive view that that's some sort of Marxist progressive thing, because we've been trained to believe that in the last 20 or 30 years, where it's just, no, it's actually, and he's very good at laying out. He doesn't say it's wrong to call God he.
No.
He's just saying, understand that is man projecting a patriarchal view of God, a male view of God onto God, when God transcends sex and is neither male or female.
Right.
And so, and to which he has not had any problem having a female pastor show up to his house and to church and refer to God during a sermon or a prayer as a she, because he views it as the same way of she's anthropomorphizing God in the same way we have anthropomorphized God in the Old and New Testament, and pretty much every society has. There's, the number of matriarchal societies, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a few. But
sure,
society has largely been patriarchal, and so therefore it stands to reason. But that doesn't mean then God is a he, and it is antithetical to think of her as, well, it is just as, so you are describing him that way because that makes you feel comfortable. It makes sense in your society, but that doesn't make him a he.
Right.
But again, people will take that because Scripture is literal, and because it says he, then it means he's a he, and this, that, and the other. Which then, which is an interesting thing, because then it does mean, okay, so you really do believe that the female sex is inferior to the male,
right?
Because it's not reflective of the divine.
No.
And they would say, oh, no. Well, apparently it does if you're this worked up about it.
And they do get worked up about it.
Yeah, so Greg's got more progressive views, very Anabaptist. His view of the Old Testament is in line with ours, or I would say we're in line with his, whereas things that are difficult for us to understand in the Old Testament need to be viewed within the lens of Jesus and how that looks and explains Jesus. Off the top of my head, there's a moment where Moses, was it Moses or Abraham? Abraham, I think, is talking about, somebody's talking about, God's talking about destroying. Oh, it's Moses is bargaining with the Israelites. Israelites are still rebellious, and God's like, I'm just going to destroy them. I'm just going to kill them all.
Yeah.
I saved you idiots from the Pharaoh, and you're still ingrates. This is like the flood all over again. I'm just going to wipe your asses out and start again and build people's understanding of me through another group of people because you've let me down once again. And Moses pleads with them and says, no. Whatever they've done is on me. I'm just as guilty as they are.
Right.
And people view that as, which is a fair interpretation.
Yep.
A shallow I would say it's a shallow one, is God's willing to wipe out. That's not, but I think the proper interpretation is God's like, all right, God is testing Moses as to where Moses' level of mercy is.
Right.
And Moses gives the right answer.
Yes.
That would be a Jesus view of that. Whereas I think a more classical, a more second millennium or the last 1,500 years of the church would say, oh, God's willing to wipe out the Israelites just as he did the Amalekites and the Philistines and everybody else, because if you run afoul of his favor, he'll destroy you because you haven't earned his love. And again, Anabaptist view says, no, that's one can't, everything is the world is understood through Jesus. So how do we understand this through the eyes of Jesus? So long-winded a way of explaining who Greg Boyd is. He has a podcast every week. It's 1, sometimes 3 episodes a week. They can be 3 minutes, they can be 10 minutes. Usually it's him and another guy who's also, I think he's a pastor, got a doctorate in something. They're friends. The other guy's an author as well. They usually have somebody write in with an interesting question, and Greg and the other guy respond. This week's question was, a female wrote in and said, why is it not dogma in the church that God is love?
Great question.
And if you're wondering about the meaning of that question, remember when we did dogma versus doctrine? Dogma is Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus died on the cross. Jesus rose up 3 days later. Doctrine is us trying to interpret those things in the best way we can, and then rules and explanations and yada, yada, yada. And so she's basically saying is, why does it not seem like the church accepts that God is love is as fundamental as Jesus is the Son of God, died on the cross, rose 3 days later for our sins?
Right.
Greg's answer is he does point out it is scriptural and it doesn't appear to be dogma today. He points out the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed don't mention that God is love.
Nope.
Apostles' Creed was 4th or 5th century, and Nicene Creed was created in 325 AD, so 4th century. Those are both after the church has become church and state.
Yeah.
And that's where his answer rests in, once the church became melded in state after Constantine, the view of the church changed. And he cites Clement and Origen and other early theologians. If you've never heard of them, they are like early. They're like 1st century, 2nd century. They're before the church organizes thinkers. I have not read either one, just to be clear. I've read smatterings or the cliff notes of what they believe. After this, I kind of want to like crack open Origen or Clement, but he makes it very clear Origen and Clement do talk about God being love. And he points out that they talk more about who God is rather than the metaphysics of God. And that once the church became organized under Constantine and thought started being organized, that the church started moving towards the metaphysics of God, like the omnipotence of God and who God is and what he is and what he isn't, not what he believes, but what he is and what he isn't. He even talks about how Augustine struggles with this and doesn't talk a lot about what God believes, but who God is, what he isn't, that kind of thing.
Self-actualization.
Yes. And that it became very convenient for the church to adopt the view of Old Testament power and not love as one of its tools in order to grow Christendom as a religious political entity. And he specifically says, like, if you want to have a bunch of people go out and die for Constantinople, then you got to give them a good reason to do it. So you cite him Joshua and the Israelites marching around Jericho 7 times and screaming and the thing coming down. And that gives them, oh yeah, now I know I have God behind me. And I got to say that very much that I think it's a good, like, poor man's 7-minute explanation for it.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So I was talking about this on Sunday with Jordan because he was like, what's on tap for this week's podcast?
I didn't know you talked to Jordan about it. Now I'm really interested.
Yeah. And we kind of got to talking about it, and we both talked about how God is love seems like a crucial way of viewing scripture, but we have to recognize that the Bible is used as a weapon and not and used as a weapon to benefit mankind or we use God as a weapon all the time. The gods are with us. The gods are with us. The gods are with us. God is with us. God is with us. And so therefore and so therefore we will use that as a reason for whatever it is that we do. Manifest destiny. Dethroning a king in fucking England. I'm like,
yeah,
whatever. Crusades. You know, there's a variety of different things that and it's not, and I'm not saying that it's harmful in all aspects. You know, I quote Rascal Flatts when I say, God bless the broken road that led us to where we are today. You know, I mean, it's that's not spot on. I mean, he's talking about some girl or whatever, but I'm saying that the road that our world is taking, this is where we're at. And so we got to figure out how to move forward, but it was a broken road that we've been through. And so how do we move forward since then? And we believe that it's love. So Greg talks about how, like, you know, they just accepted that was something, a part of God's character. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Well, I think he was speaking specifically the first or second generation.
Yeah, well, and when he's talking about the first and second generation, I don't know what second generation looks like. Again, we're talking about, that would have to be something where I would have to look more into Hebrew, or not Hebrew, but Jewish religious practices. I would need to know more about what we would call Gentile religious practices. Where does love fit in that? Because they're gonna adapt, or they're gonna assume that God is something in line with what it is that they've already known for some period of time about their particular God. He's different. Jesus came and therefore manifested this, but I don't know if they necessarily fully grasped. I'm not sitting there and saying that we're able to grasp that concept a little bit better 2,000 years later, but like, I believe that we are, just based off of the response of the people in Jesus's time. And I don't blame them, but we've had 2,000 years to wrestle with this concept.
Yeah.
And actually, when I say we've had 2,000 years to wrestle with this concept, we've had like 300 years to wrestle with this concept.
Yeah, you and I are a product of the last.
And I was like, really, it's the last 100 years people have been able to wrestle with this concept. And that's where we're getting to that self-actualization. We're now in that hierarchy of needs where we're dealing with problems that nobody else had to fucking deal with before. Because the Bible is so easily accessible to all of us. Everybody can be an expert, and I'm putting quotes around expert at any given time.
They can be learned about the Bible.
Learned. There's YouTube videos. You could get on some YouTube trail or whatever, and you can become learned. You could become an armchair. You could be us at any point in time that you want to be. If you're listening to this podcast, you might be like, I have an opinion on this because Tim and Colton said something about it. But what I'm saying is that over these 2,000 years, and really, like, this is kind of that. And so I don't push back on that whole, like, kind of Roman Empire where it's like, okay, this is where they struggled or whatever. And I was like, yeah, once it hit fucking medieval times, nobody gave a rat's ass about whether it was love. It was, I need this guy to help me get rain to my fucking crops. I need to pray that my kid isn't going to die from the bubonic plague. And so we kind of go back to this barbaric kind of view of God. And even like, I went to the Viking Museum in fucking, what's the town? What's the Denmark town in Solvang? Right? Solvang?
Yeah, Solvang.
Yeah, went to Solvang. And God, to the Vikings, when they first get introduced to God, they have a different crucifix than the Catholic Church. So their crucifix is God not on a cross, but it's actually just like Jesus with his arms out, with a crown, not of thorns, but of like this kingly stature or whatever. Because for them, they wanted a conqueror. It wasn't about it. They were like, my God wouldn't die. My God's not weak.
Yeah.
And so that was the one that they accepted. God became what people needed in that moment because, again, varieties of people are needing God to be different things at different times. And I think that God is able to be that to certain people where he meets you where you are, as we've talked about. But at the same time, people then use that as a narrative to push whatever. And I think that now we're in this time where we're able to ask questions about all that. We now have history to which people did not fucking have before. Historians before, what's his name that wrote fucking, what's the famous Greek historian that wrote, that was at the Battle of Thermopylae, and he said that there was like 1 million Persians that were at that battle, or does it start with an H?
It's not Tacitus. No,
it's not.
Tacitus is Roman law. I can't remember.
Anyways, even he's not like, he's not, he doesn't have text, he doesn't have YouTube videos, he doesn't have all this stuff coming to him live, like whatever. He's picking together scraps from what he knows. It's, dude, I'm going to kick myself later when I can't remember this guy's fucking name. And so the world that we live in now is struggling with this concept. And so we're like, okay, we're actually able to get and which is great. I don't have a problem with this at all, is that we're able to sit back and we're able to take a big picture look at the Old Testament and the New Testament and understand who God is. We're able to take a look at him over the scope of these hundreds of years that the Jews are writing about him, that the Hebrews are writing about him in scripture, the Israelis or the Israelites, and then eventually the New Testament, that these early Christians, Paul, they're all able to write. And we have this great lining of up of text where we're able to sit there and look at God's character across all of those books. And we can sit there and definitively say that God is love. And that's actually why I push against, and why I highly encourage people to do so, against biblical tradition, where it's like, okay, so just because this was something that's been around since fucking Martin Luther, like we do the Apostles' Creed,
right?
That doesn't mean that I don't disagree with the things from Apostles' Creed, but we're fucking 300 years past that now, more than.
Well, Apostles' Creed were 1800 years past it.
Yeah. And it's like, we are years past that now. Can we not say that there are things that can change in the way that we perceive, that we actually believe that we have a better understanding now than they did 1800 years ago?
Yeah, it's probably not a better understanding. It's just an understanding that fits our are today.
Well, and I mean, and that's also where I do caution, and I think that was part of the conversation that Jordan and I were having, where it's like, I don't want to be the part that, you know, we on this podcast, I'm not saying in the universal we, like I wouldn't say this for Christians nowadays, but we use God to still for manifest destiny. We still use it for X, Y, and Z. I really believe in love, and I believe that it's important. I believe that is truly what God wants for us. But also, like, I have to understand that I have to sit there and say that this is ultimately, and this kind of goes to Greg Boyd's piece, I believe it is foundational for my faith. But at the end of the day, is it, when we talk about dogma, then that means that if I don't believe in that, am I aligned with God? Am I aligned? Because dogmas are, so it goes Christ at the center, then it goes dogmas. Those are the pillars. Then you have doctrine. Then you have opinion. And so to sit there and say that God is love, and we get up to heaven and God's like, no, I'm not love all the time. And yeah, we need some conquering or whatever. Does that mean that I didn't buy in? I'd sit there and say, well, then that's not what I bought into. What I bought into was your sense of love, and that you believed in restoring humanity and caring for the world. Because for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that for whoever believed in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Because I believe that that's important.
All right, sorry, I got to stop real quick. There's some baseball reporter on ESPN. He's got one hell of a bookcase behind him. He's got the book, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. He's got an old PlayStation. He's got Jimi Hendrix album on vinyl. He's got Rage Against the Machine's first album on vinyl. He's got Dark Side of the Moon in vinyl. This guy is really trying hard to say he's cool.
Got Enter the Wu-Tang back there. You see it?
Enter the Wu-Tang. All right. You know what? You tried really hard and you did a really good job. Whoever you are, you can show up at Kauai on a Friday and fit right in, buddy. They're talking about Pete Rose's Rose being removed from being banned. And Shoeless Joe. Well, Shoeless Joe for sure. Shoeless Joe was a moron who got roped into. But anyway, I think you said it's very important. We have to understand the time. I think one of the things that's very clear, I think that's my problem with today is if I'm going to channel the old guy who's upset about old young people on his lawn. The problem with young people is they judge things without having any historical context as to why people believed what they believed. So I don't want to do that. And so it is, I would say, and I don't know that Greg was doing this. I mean, it's an 8-minute thing. It wasn't like a 40-minute conversation to do what you and I are doing, Colton, but it's understandable. I think I agree with the person who wrote the question in. I agree with the answer. I do think the church kind of didn't lean in on love enough. At the same time, I think a lot of what we today in 2025 bristle at is a fully formed democratic world where people have right to self-determination. And until really a century ago, for Americans it was longer than that, but for a century ago, most people around the world lived and died according to the will of a sovereign at the end of the day. And that sovereign was supposedly appointed by God. And so therefore, whatever the sovereign said, God said, and so that's the way the world was, and there weren't really many choices in understanding the world, living the world, whatever. I'm going to do whatever God tells me and whatever the sovereign tells me. And so I would say that the church was largely built around instilling, and I don't think it's unfair to say that the church was largely focused on moral structures and enforcing those moral structures.
Yeah.
And not love.
Yes.
That said, that you can make that criticism, and the person who wrote that in is completely accurate to say that, and that was probably a problem with the church that made the church not as effective and didn't fulfill what the kingdom of Jesus's kingdom on earth is supposed to be. What I would say, and certainly what a Calvinist would say, is I'm gonna channel a Calvinist, which is that depends on what your definition of what God is. And a Calvinist would say part of God's love and part of Christ's love is to say, you follow me, you live for me, you die for me, and however I say you're supposed to live in this world is how you live in this world. And by doing so, you don't prove or earn my love, but you demonstrate your love, your fealty, your loyalty to me. That would be a Calvinist view of the world. It's frankly not an outrageous view of what Christ is. There is a very sound view. That is a sound view of Christ. And I think what we're struggling with, and those of you who are listening to this who lean more into the love thing, is the problem you have is that love becomes a cute word for libertine, which is I get to do whatever I want to do and I'm going to call it love. And I think that's the problem that the church is struggling with right now. Did we need a more dose of love and grace and compassion and understand that part of Christ's message? Yes, I think for too long we leaned in onto the death, destruction, and judgment and going to hell part. But I think where the crisis of the church is, and where the old church, meaning the pre-modern church or the modern church and the postmodern church right now, are trying to reach an equilibrium, is what does love mean? Because a lot of people seem to think love means Jesus accepts me for whoever and whatever I do. And that is not the message of the gospel.
Yeah.
That also doesn't mean that you are condemned to hell because you are struggling with who you are and what you're doing, but it doesn't give you carte blanche to do that. And so that would be my only pushback if I had a longer conversation with Greg, is love cannot be a substitution for libertine behavior. Right. And I think that's where I think Calvinism has largely lost, and we don't live in this world of God's king and this bloody view of Revelation where God's going to come in and Jesus, just like Gandalf, is going to smite all of the sinners like they are the bad guys and come in and bring in his new kingdom. That's not the proper view of Christ either. Yeah. But this whole thing of, oh, no, everyone's just got to self-realize, well, you've been saying this entire episode. It just means Jesus wants us to self-realize who we are and become who we want to be, and then that's somehow the manifestation of who Jesus died for. No, that is not what that is. There is a large level of uncomfortableness in becoming a Jesus follower. There are things that we have to train ourselves not to be, not to do in order to be a Jesus follower. Where that is, that's a whole conversation. That's what we're fighting over. I don't want to get in that tonight, but I think that's the problem with the love question. It is certainly true to say that the church didn't lean into love, going in and wiping out indigenous peoples because they refused to give up their pagan god and follow to Jesus. That's not a demonstration of love. And certainly the church, not just the Catholic Church, but also the Protestants, lived by that behavior for far too long. That was not a manifestation of Christ's love. But you can go too far and then equally be outside of Christ's love, because there are ways that we in our fallen selves want to live that is antithetical to what Jesus wants, and really what makes the world best for all, not just in terms of loving one another, but raising healthy children and healthy adults and all kinds of other things. We're now in an age where indulging our narcissisms is seen as an act of heroism.
Yes.
And that is not a thought that exists on the cross.
No.
Again, if you're struggling with that, it doesn't make you a non-believer. But if you're not struggling with that, you might be a little out of line with Jesus, and you need to struggle with that. So I will say overall, though, I think I'm better off where the church is now than even it was, I would say, 120 years ago. Or just being a Jesus follower is going to church every Sunday, not doing this. You're judged by what you're not doing and doing.
Right.
Instead of who you are, who you're being with, who you're not being with.
Yep.
In a human way. Not these things where, well, I'm not doing this and God's going to be offended because I have too much to drink. I think God's, but at the same time, I'm going to be an asshole at work, or I'm going to treat my employees like shit, or treat my employer like shit because I think I should make more money. Or my children, they don't break any rules, but they're also scared to death of me and are going to have, issues with authority figures for the rest of their life. Yeah, that's not love either. So, live by the not the sword, but anyway. All right, I think that's it.
Works for me.
Well, we thank you for listening. Yada yada yada. If you're not excited that we're brewing beer now, you can go to hell. Go Ramblin Brewing Company.